This episode of The Unstarving Musician is powered by liner notes. Learn from the hundreds of musicians and industry professionals I've spoken with for The Unstarving Musician on topics such as marketing, songwriting, touring, sync licensing, and much more. Sign up for liner notes at unstarvingmusician.com. It's an email newsletter from yours truly in which I share some of the best knowledge gems garnered from the many conversations featured on The Unstarving Musician. You'll also be privy to the latest podcast episodes and liner notes subscriber exclusives. Sign up at unstarvingmusician.com. It's free and you can unsubscribe at any time. Welcome to another episode of The Unstarving Musician. I'm Rabonzo. This is my podcast. It features conversations with independent music artists and industry professionals, and an occasional special topic episode featuring only yours truly, all intended to help independent music artists better understand the marketing, business, and creative processes that empower us to do more of what we love, make music. Happy New Year. Did you survive? I did. There was a lot of travel involved. I came home with a cold, but it's all good. I'm feeling great today as I record this intro for you. Approaching Friday the 13th of January 2023. Woo! I got some Christmas swag from some friends while I was in Texas, the Texas leg of my travels. I got an advanced copy of Dean Johannesson's Cautionary Tales CD. I got a hardback copy of Ryan Dussick's memoir, Harder to Breathe. Ryan is the founding member / drummer from Maroon 5. And I got a capsule condenser mic from TZ Audios, a distributor of Tech Zone audio products. I'm using it right now. Mic check. So for that, there will be some forthcoming videos for TZ Audios and their Music Moment project in exchange for this lovely gift that I'm starting to enjoy already. I am preparing feverishly for my first gig in Querétaro and an audition later this week. The Unstarving Musician needs your support. You can support us in many ways. You can follow us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to The Unstarving Musician. You can tell a friend about this podcast. That would be amazing. Or you can visit unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor or the show notes for this episode to learn about the many ways of offering your support. My guest for this episode is Nashville-based country artist Charlie Berry, who launched his solo career with the release of his first single at the beginning of 2021. Berry produces his own recordings, highlighting his combined talents as a vocalist, songwriter, and instrumentalist. And his bio got this part right. He's carried by his strong, grounding voice, smart songwriting, and skill as a producer. Charlie's compositions are indeed catchy and relatable. His influences span multiple genres, including Bruce Springsteen, Tom Petty, and Fleetwood Mac. I'm sure there's a lot more. We might have even talked about some. Berry hasn't always been a country artist, though. He started out playing punk rock back in his home state of Texas and still draws inspiration from the energy of that music. Yeah, originally from Dallas, which is where I'm from, more or less. Fort Worth, really. Close by. Very close. Berry moved to Nashville to immerse himself in the world of country music and has spent the past decade learning the craft of songwriting from the source, Nashville. After a 7-year run as the singer of country trio Mockingbird Sun, Berry decided to embark on the journey of carving out a solo career for himself. The release of his single Whiskey Take It Easy in January 2021 won Berry a place in the world of modern country. He writes thoughtful lyrics akin to singer-songwriters of the 90s and combines that with production styles of modern country and pop, which is kind of cool. Based on our conversation, Charlie seems to have found his groove in Nashville, and I'm sure he welcomes country stardom should that day come. In the meantime, he's doubled down on songwriting. We talk about songwriting, plus Spotify streaming numbers, the creative process, booking shows, productivity and routine, studio production and lessons learned therein, advice for singers, and advice for surviving for surviving Nashville. All right, here is me talking to Charlie Berry. I saw your recent tweet that said, as a singer, one cool thing that happens is I get sick and lose my voice from November to March. Then I get it back just in time for allergy season.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Nashville has terrible allergies. I think everybody says this about their city. Like, oh, the allergies are really bad here. Kind of like, well, if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes, it'll change. Everyone says that everywhere about their weather. But yeah, so I kind of fight this kind of lingering sickness. I think a lot of people do, but it's somehow always affecting my voice. So always fighting. I've always got the steam going. Just chugging water.
That will help for sure. I'm sorry to hear it. I saw that and I was like, oh no. And of course, you mentioned it pre-record here, and I thought, well, maybe this is like, I don't know, maybe maybe he's not really sick. Anyway, I'm sorry to hear that. I hope you recover quickly. So yeah, I can say where I am. I'm actually in Mexico, the town that I live in, Querétaro. I haven't been here a full year, so I might be eating crow later, but the allergies have not been so bad. But that I think is coming with my age too, so I'm just kind of lucky that way.
You think you've built up the tolerance to all of it or what?
I don't know. I mean, I'm having, other things happen to me as I get older, but the
Oh, right. Yeah.
allergies.
It's funny. I always thought I'd like get rid of acne before I got gray hair. It's like, nah, we're gonna exist in the middle here for a while. I've got a couple grays in the beard. The other day I was like looking at my face, I was like, you gotta be kidding me, man.
Well, the other part will keep you looking young and feeling
Yeah,
young, I guess.
yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yes. I should get braces. So people think,
It's not too late.
yeah,
From what I can tell, you have great teeth, though, so I wouldn't worry about it. But
thank you.
hey,
So
congratulations on the latest single. I'm still here. Man, I had written down when that actually came out. When was it released?
I think it was
September, anyway.
September 23rd, something like that. Yeah.
Pretty recent. I have been listening to that and your other stuff that's on Spotify. I don't know if that's everything, but also listen to what I believe is your first single, Whiskey Take It Easy. They both sound great, by the way. And
Thank you.
do I have it correct that you self-produced both?
Yeah, I did. I actually the mic that I'm speaking into right now is the mic I sung those songs on, and I got a little studio in the back of my house where I got a bunch of fun toys out here, a bunch of guitars and recording equipment, and I just kind of get in here and figure it out. I'm not an engineer by trade or anything, so I'm just kind of flying by the seat of my pants, but I really love that part of the creative process.
I'm happy to hear that. And you're in good company. I'm using what has been my vocal mic for live performance and the little bit of recording that I've done to talk to you today, too. So, by the way, the cover art for I'm Still Here. So I've been commenting it on social a little bit
It's
today.
still here.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. What did I say?
You said I'm.
It's still here. I've said that
It's still
twice, I
here.
bet.
That's right. Yeah,
Sorry
okay.
about that. Thank you. So that looks like a 260 or 280Z or something like that. Is that right?
It is a 280Z. It is. There's actually a story behind it. The song is about hometowns, and you pull back into your hometown and get hit with all these memories you thought you'd left behind, or I guess you did leave behind, and they were back in your hometown waiting for you doing push-ups, and you just get there, you pull back into town and get hit over the head with all this nostalgia, and then take this trip through a relationship where you remember the sweet stuff first, and after a little while you go, oh yeah, that's why we broke up. The 280Z, my dad drove one of those when I was growing up. It's a 1976 baby blue Datsun 280Z. It was a hand-me-down from my grandfather. We were so broke. It broke down all the time. But man, I thought that car was cool. It's like a skateboard with a rocket engine. They just don't weigh anything, and they got this motor in them. Man, we had a lot of fun in that car, and we listened to a lot of great music in that car.
You know, I commented on it because I recognized it. I didn't have the model quite down. I didn't look at it close enough, probably, but a high school friend had one of those. I believe it was the 280s, same color, everything. And he later upgraded to, I guess the 300 was maybe next. And I spent a lot of time in that car with him, but yeah, very nostalgic.
I mean, and if you spent time with anyone in that car, you're like sitting in each other's lap. I mean, it's like
Right.
you are really close together. They're just tiny little cars, but and they sit really low to the ground. They're a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah. And I notice a difference in, excuse me, the production style, slight difference in Whiskey Take It Easy and It's Still Here. And that may just be simply your progression through this journey of self-producing your recordings, or it may be like, I'm going to do something a little bit different. And the thing that stood up for me most was the drum sounds of the two. But can you talk a little bit about the anything that you perceive as sort of the changes in the sound between the two tracks?
Well, I think that I would love to claim that it's purely evolution. I'm sure there's some of that in there, but I think a big difference was I had two different mix engineers. I don't mix the records myself, and two different drummers too. Ben Phillips played drums on the first one. It was mixed by Mills Logan, a guy that's done a bunch of great records, and It's Still Here was my friend Pete Wilson on drums, and that was mixed by Jamie Tate at the Ruckus Room, and he's kind of known for big rock sounding drums. So I think that's a big part of it. The drums are actually more front and center on It's Still Here.
Yeah, I think that too. Oddly enough, I was intrigued a little more just in the few listens that I did to the drum sounds on Whiskey Take It Easy. However, what you said seems totally true, that the drum sound is more upfront, which is very cool. And I'm a drummer, so I really get into that. And it's refreshing to hear, your music and think, oh, it sounds like some real drums, especially in It's Still Here with I'm not really great at like picking up programmed drums, although sometimes they're just blatantly not like an acoustic kit.
Yeah.
And maybe programmed, but with Whiskey Take It Easy, I wasn't 100% sure, but I'm like, sounds like a kit, but it just has, kind of a unique sound.
It is a kit, and I'll say this, part of the, if we're going to get into the actual production techniques and stuff, which I love, so let's do it for a moment. Like with Whiskey Take It Easy, it is on the grid. I moved every single hit of a drum onto the grid, meaning it's like, I know you know this, but for people that are listening that might not, it is completely locked into a metronome, much like a drum machine would be, maybe even more. That's kind of a pop technique. And with It's Still Here, I was a little bored with that, I think. And I also got a little more confidence in letting the instruments speak for themselves, letting the performances speak a little more. So I wouldn't leave mistakes in there, but a lot less editing on It's Still Here. And honestly, it makes it feel a little more rock and roll.
Yeah, yeah. And you sound, as country as you are proclaimed to be, you sound a lot like a rock singer. And I gather that you have done some rock vocals and playing in your time.
Yeah, I grew up playing rock music. It was all classic rock until I turned like 12, and then it was all punk rock until I moved to Nashville. I really backed into country music just through getting more and more interested in lyric writing. I really enjoy how specific you can be in country. I really like that, at the time when I made the move here, it was 10 years ago or so, rock music had a very narrow scope of what you could do lyrically. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to write about my high school girlfriend anymore. Like I want to be able to write about growing up and having kids, or maybe that's just how I viewed it. But it seemed that rock at the time was getting more and more narrow, and it seemed that country was expanding, and that was exciting to me creatively.
Yeah, I can see that. Rock definitely has a huge back catalog of obscurities when it comes to storytelling, and then you have some exceptions to that, of course, in the artists that are as much songwriters as they are, rock guys. But
And you know what, man, it's expanded back again. That what's you're hearing on the radio now is much more diverse than what was happening at that time. Just at that time, I was like playing on the bill with bands that I didn't like. As a rock musician, I was like, man, this really isn't my style. And I was sick of being confused for part of that scene. And I was like, I'm just going to do something totally different. And ended up in Nashville.
so wait, you guys have radio in Nashville?
Just a
Just kidding.
little bit. Yeah, a couple stations. Man, I was driving a couple days ago, and I realized there's one station on like three different numbers on the dial. Like they're not messing around.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, like
Nice.
3 consecutive button pushes. It was all seeking through the channels. It was all the same broadcast.
I'm reminded we were in an Uber, my wife and I, the other day, and the driver had. We're in Mexico, right, in a town called Querétaro, and the driver had some American pop on, and it was on the radio, and I'm like, all right, Sam, my wife, take a look at that because you probably want that. 'Cause she has a hard time getting her whole Bluetooth action going whenever she drives the car. So I told her I'd preset every station to that station, but
Yes.
kind of funny. So
Yeah.
you are originally from Dallas Fort Worth. Are you from Dallas proper?
I'm from Dallas, Texas. Yeah, right in the middle.
Nice. So 10 years ago, you left Dallas to go to Nashville.
I did. Yeah, and it was kind of, I wouldn't say it's spur of the moment. I was pretty unsure about what I was going to do, and I guess when I say that, I mean I really wanted to do music and I didn't know how to pull it off. And after college, I graduated actually from SMU, which is like right down the street from where I grew up in Dallas. And it was like, okay, it's LA or Nashville, and Nashville just felt a little better to me.
Sure. Well, kudos, man. It looks like you're figuring it out in such a weird time too. I still haven't figured it out.
Well, it's funny. I've now got people calling me going, how do you do it, man? I'm like, I have no idea. I
Oh,
don't
that's
know.
funny. That's
You know,
funny.
I so I still feel very much like I'm in process figuring this thing out and learning as I go.
Yeah, and I would imagine it still comes with some head scratching and occasional frustration even as well as you're doing. And by the way, I meant to say congratulations on the vanity number of 14,000, about 14,000 or maybe 14,000 plus listeners on Spotify. That's pretty cool.
Oh, thank you. That's been dropping a little bit. At one point last month, it was like 60. Um,
Wow.
yeah, it was great. It's funny you talk about head scratching. I've spent the past month or so kind of going, okay, what have I learned this year? Where do I need to go? I've disappeared a little bit off of social media, and I'm just kind of coming out of hibernation there. Um, but yeah, still, this last song has done better than any song I've ever released. It hit 100,000 streams last week, which is a little over a month in, and that's like the best I've ever done by far, or the quickest I've ever gotten to that number by far. And I still was like, how am I going to keep going? How do I keep doing this? Uh, and of course I will keep doing it, but reevaluating and figuring it out and somehow being frustrated while I'm doing better than I've ever done. There's a lot of kind of ironic things that happen like that, especially I think in a creative field like this.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up I was born in Fort Worth, by the way, and I grew up
Oh,
in,
nice.
in Arlington and played around Dallas Fort Worth for a long time. And then
Oh man, I bet we played all the same clubs.
maybe, but you probably were doing it long after so I left and went to San Jose, California and started all over there for several years. But and
I
I
played out
just
there too.
oh nice, good.
Yeah.
Good to hear. But yeah, we probably have some acquaintances at least. And funny enough, I've explored your story with a couple of other guests who have been in Dallas, gone to Nashville, and some of these guys I think they're older than you are, have returned to Dallas, but some are still in Nashville, and so it's fun to hear to be talking to you about your perspective. Now, I gathered when you went to Nashville, by the way, tell me if I have this right, that you had joined country trio Mockingbird Sun.
Okay, so that happened let's see. That happened about 6 months after, maybe 4 months after I moved to Nashville. When I looked at the landscape of country music and I thought, okay, how do I do this in an authentic way, straight out of like pop punk and emo bands, going, what are my favorite parts of this? Really what drew me in most was like the old harmony groups, Restless Heart and Alabama and Black Hawk and groups like that. And I was like, okay, and so many people have tried to do this, but like, okay, well, if Tom Petty or the Eagles came out today, it's possible that they'd be marketed as a country group. Like, how do we do this kind of vintage rock and roll 3-part harmony thing? And I just through some mutual connections and old friends found a couple other guys that we just sounded really good together singing. put that group together and, man, hit the road for about 7 years.
Wow. It sounds like you did some noteworthy opening acts or open for some noteworthy folks too along those 7 years. And I don't know if that was like the highlight or anything, but it must have been a little fun.
We did a lot of cool stuff for a band that really didn't have any success. It's like I look back and go, I don't, man, we pulled off, we had some really cool things happen to us and got to play some really big shows, Toby Keith and Kenny Chesney and big names like that. Eli Young Band was a favorite that we got to open for. Even at one point played a show on the deck of an aircraft carrier in the Indian Ocean, which was wild. Um, we had some great times, really great times.
Yeah, that's big. That sounds big time, man. It
It
does.
was, yeah, it was cool.
And then I don't know, tell me where this part of where this chapter comes along or if it's overlapping and if it's something you still do, and maybe more importantly, how you came into it. And I read that you've also done a number of backing vocal gigs working
Yeah.
for Noteworthies as well.
Okay, so I think I did skip a little bit of a chapter. Right when I moved to Nashville, it took me moving to Nashville to get a gig with Granger Smith, who at the time was really strictly a Texas country artist. So I was commuting back to Texas from Nashville, but determined to stay in Tennessee for my own songwriting and singing. So I got to be his guitar player. I learned a lot from him. He's an incredibly hard worker and a smart guy. But really, at one point, I had spent so much. I was losing money on the gig because I was driving 700 miles at least to every bus call. So that convinced me, like, hey, if I'm going to lose money, I'm doing it with my name on the ticket, right? Like it's going to be my name on the marquee or my band or whatever. So that's really what pushed me into starting that band. And as bands do, even the Beatles lasted 6 years or so. Isn't that right? From their first record to their last, it was like a 6 or 7 year run, which is incredible, by the way. It's like, the Backstreet Boys somehow becoming Radiohead in 6 years. um, so anyway, like, when you're on the road with people, you see the best and worst of each other, and man, we just were butting heads and growing apart. And I think if we had had more success, we'd still be going. But success can cure a lot of problems. But we were just worn out, and so the band came to an end. I wasn't sure what I was going to do at that point. I actually was online applying for a job at the Home Depot when my friend Eric Dillon was like, "Hey man, I heard you're back in town. Do you want to play the Bluebird?" And I closed out the thing. I was like, "Yeah, screw it, screw Home Depot. I'm not going to work over there." So he kind of kept, honestly, that little moment. I probably made too much of it, but it kept me in the music business. And I really doubled down on songwriting. So had it in my mind that I would get a publishing deal and wrote songs, a couple songs a day, several times a week, 4 or 5 times a week for like 3.5, 4 years. And during that time, I got to go on the road with Levi Hummon, Cassidy Pope as a sideman, like playing in their bands.
Hmm.
Let's see, Josh Thompson was a favorite. All the while, kind of keeping my eye on this solo artist thing that I'm not sure why I didn't start early. I think I thought I'd get a publishing deal and then that would help my chances. But when that kind of didn't pan out, it was like my dad passed away in 2020. God, I'm covering a lot of ground right now, aren't I?
Yeah, that's all right.
my,
It's good.
yeah, okay, so my dad passed away in 2020, and it really put things in perspective. Like, hey, man, life is short. If I'm going to do this, I need to do it now. And that's when I put out my first single.
That's a good story. Good
Yeah,
story. Do you still think about the publishing deal, or is it something that ever came to fruition, or is it just like I don't really care about that at this moment in time?
I'd love a publishing deal. I love writing songs. I'd love to be in that world, have a foot in that world. I think that the process of writing songs and coming to the conclusion that I really just want to put songs out myself, it did give me some clarity on, okay, I do think I'm first and foremost an artist. I'm an artist that can write songs, but I won't be satisfied at this point if it's just writing songs. For me, the creative process ends when I share the song with someone. And that can be on stage, or preferably that's on stage, but playing it on the aux cable in a car or whatever. That watching someone hear the song is really the final pen stroke of writing it for me. To just write songs, it almost feels incomplete.
Do you see yourself having that same feeling if you've written some things that were recorded by other artists and ultimately shared by them in some way that catches your attention?
I'll say this, I've never had massive success as a songwriter, but I've had, 10 or 15 songs recorded by others, and it doesn't scratch the itch. I love it when that happens, and I think it's really cool. But like I said, it may be a step closer, but still feels a little bit incomplete.
Sure. Until it brings a huge mailbox check on a regular basis.
You may be right about that.
Maybe.
I'd love to find out I'm wrong about that.
Hey, you still have time.
Yes.
By the way, how long have you been working with Core PR? I hope I said that right. And
Yeah.
how's it been going for you? And is it the first PR company you've worked with?
So I've been working for them almost a year, I think. It's been great. Anna and Dawn are cool and fun and exciting, and they do a great job. They do a great job. I've done with my band, we kind of had everything but a label. We had great booking, great management, great PR. Um, so it's not my first toe that I've dipped into the PR world, but it is the first time I've directly managed uh, that kind of thing.
Well, it looks like it's going well.
It's going great, man. It's going great. That's why we're here.
Are you guys getting to you guys being your band? Are you getting to perform much lately?
No, we're looking towards 2023 right now. Uh, booking shows is the to me, for somebody that doesn't really like to email or talk, uh, like text or whatever, it is the hardest job, the absolute hardest job in the industry. So I'd love to get booking and hopefully hopefully get out there a little bit more.
Maybe you need to mix in more in-person follow-up or initial contact when I know that's not possible all the time, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, if you have tips, I'll take them.
certainly when they're in proximity, I've always told people, and you're speaking to someone, by the way, who's always just been sort of like a working musician playing in maybe multiple bands at once and subbing, and this is on drums and doing a little singing. But certainly I've always preached, because I found it so effective for myself to stay booked all the time, is to get FaceTime when possible. Not everybody's into it, right? Some of them are just like, I don't, just email me. But
Right.
but there's a lot of them that really appreciate that, and especially if it's the type of venue where you can also be a patron, which most of them are, right? You're either supporting just their art, maybe that's all they do, showcase bands, or it's one of these places that does food and or beverage or whatever. They really love when you're hanging out, and if you can do it obviously at a time when your contact is there, that's really great. But I'm sure, given the types of shows you've been involved in, there's a whole world of tips that I wouldn't be able to offer that you can.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I think that all of that is probably very true. I do writers rounds in town. I've played shows. I was in Texas a couple weeks ago doing shows, so it's not like I've been sitting around. But I would love to be booked solid. Being booked solid and getting paid for it. Those are both factors that I would love to have at the same time.
Well, you might build. I mean, this again. This is how I did it. You're operating in a different plane, but you might move that needle by continuing to do what you've been doing while you're still working with your original, with your own band. So what I mean is, like, stay open to doing those sideman gigs, because as you have learned, I'm sure, you end up making, getting to ask people questions about venues that you've maybe hadn't played before, or, meeting the people that help you do that, or just getting tips from those other artists. And then eventually, I'm sure, playing the way you are, and being so consistent and interested in being consistent with the writing, that within a year's time or less, that'll probably evolve into, it's just you and your thing exclusively, playing. But otherwise, you could stay solid book pretty fast, just like, okay, I'm going to do a little bit of this and my thing at first. But
it's kind of blown my mind how much time it's taken and how much commitment it's taken to be the artist.
yeah.
With my band, I had two other guys doing it with me. We split up responsibilities, and also we had booking and management and people kind of running around behind us and in front of us to take care of us and get things done. And man, as a writer, especially in Nashville, the joke is that when you write with an artist, you're scheduled from 10 to 4 p.m. They walk in at noon and say, "Hey, I got to be out of here by 12:45."
Oh
And
man.
everybody, you know what I'm saying? I mean, that doesn't always happen, but it's just kind of like the eye roll moment. And man, I get it now. I really get it now.
Oh
There's
wow.
just so many plates spinning at the same time, and they really all have to be excellent. You really don't want to let anything slip.
Yeah.
So all that to say, I miss just playing guitar and singing harmony vocals and stuff, and I don't think I have the time to prepare and be excellent at that right now.
I can understand that. I can
Yeah,
understand.
but I miss it, and
Sure.
I miss being uh in the band and not in charge of the band. That's another luxury.
Maybe the right opportunity will come. But
Yeah,
anyway, I think even if you just focus on what you're doing, I mean, that's definitely a good strategy, and being mindful of the realistic amount of time that you have is huge, right?
for sure.
Yeah. Okay, I know we started a little late. How you doing on time? You have time for a few more quick questions?
Yeah, sure.
These are just kind of a bundle of soliciting your best tips to share with listeners when the episode comes out. But
Okay.
we talked, or I just mentioned, and roundabout way, you got me to mention it, the valuing your time and protecting it. What are your best independent musician productivity tips?
Man, it's ironic because I can't say most, but I can say I have a lot of empirical data that a lot of us that get into this full-time music thing, we aren't inherently the most disciplined people. And I think that developing routine and discipline around what you're doing is something that's really helped me. It helps me do more and better work, and it keeps me sane. There's no one telling you to clock in and clock out on this thing. So you can be like a kite without a string, just flying off into the universe. And these routines and habits that we really have, whether we realize them or not, I guess you should say, having good routines and habits can really tether you to yourself and to the earth and to others and keep you connected. So that's huge for me. And the other one, as far as time management, go out there and do too much. You got to figure it out. Go find your limit, max it out. Yeah, I mean, you've probably done this where you go, you know what? I kind of sucked on this gig. I think I'm too busy, and you go, this was one too many, or this was three too many this week. So fine for this week, and I got to dial it back. Paying close attention, like most of us do, to the quality that we're putting out, just letting that determine, and how you feel, of course, letting that determine, okay, this is the sweet spot for me, and everybody's different.
Yeah, that's good stuff, and I tend to agree with all of it. And I think the latter part for me has helped me over time distill what it is that I both want to and should be doing. So, you get to the
Mm.
point, like you said, where maybe you're just not putting in as much as you want to, but then you realize, well, the thing I really want to be doing is over here. So
Yes.
it's sort of a discovery process. That's good stuff.
Step one is just be doing stuff. And if you're
That's
not
right.
busy, do something. pick up a paintbrush, do something metaphorically, pick up drumsticks, whatever. And then eventually, this is what you're saying, but I would get so booked with things that I'd go, I don't, you know what? This has taken 80% of my time and I don't even like doing this. Like, let's do this other stuff. I like this direction better. So I agree.
Sure. Yeah. And I think for some of us, some of us are lucky that we sort of know early on what exactly it is we both like and feel like we were born to do. And some of us, maybe you and I, are a little alike in that, well, I know I like some of these things, but I might like some of these other things too. So we just go out there and figure out which of those are the most important to us. What about
Man,
your? Go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say, I went to the Frist Art Museum the other day. I was walking in, they had these like lino print things on the walls, and I was like, you know what? I should get some gear and start doing that. So I'm just saying, I still don't know. I'm still taking on new things and trying new art forms and stuff. I kind of want to do it all, and it's kind of heartbreaking to me that I do have to narrow it down in order to have my voice heard.
Sure. Speaking of your voice,
Yes.
another one I wanted to ask you is what's your best advice to vocalists or singers?
Well, for some people, singing and the strength and maintaining of their voice comes really easily. We joked earlier, it's a struggle for me, and I think that learning what's necessary to perform and to perform well is another one of those things where you might have to push it too far to find out, but taking that seriously is something I didn't do early on. And I just thought, well, this is just how it goes. And really, there were steps I could have taken, getting better sleep, drinking more water, stuff like that, having professionals teach you how to take care of your voice. Do that stuff. Take it seriously. I think it might be overstating it. Maybe not. I don't know. To compare us to like athletes, pro athletes or whatever. But it's like, if this is going to be your profession, you're doing this thing like with your body. So you got to be in shape. So I think taking that seriously is something that came a little bit later to me.
I think it's a good analogy, and in fact, I think I heard someone use it in the last week. I can't remember who, but I mean, yeah, if you are taking it seriously. And long ago, a producer and wonderful musician I met in San Jose who works a lot in the blues community, had him on the podcast many, actually, I guess it's been years now, but he had said that one thing he learned about some of the singers in the blues world that he was working with was they just weren't treating their voice like an instrument. It was sort of a little bit of an afterthought, and it really got me thinking about all the folk. Well, myself got me thinking about myself, but also about a lot of people that I've worked with who endeavor to sing. And some of these folks are amazing, but some of them are a lot like I was for a long time, just not really thinking about their voice as an instrument, which is really about taking it seriously, as you said.
Your voice and your whole body.
Yeah, right, right.
It's all a part of it. It all plays into it. If you go backstage on these big gigs, especially with bands that have been doing it a long time, you have this image of what backstage would should be and would be, and it's probably it's almost certainly much. Your image of it is much wilder than it is, not yours, but the proverbial listener here. You go backstage and it's like people with theraguns warming up their forearms to play drums. It's like there's all this kind of like stuff that you would see more in a locker room of like getting physically ready to play the show. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. And then I maybe want to ask this one a little bit differently, but because we talked about it earlier, and that's your adventures in production. What has maybe been the most valuable thing you've learned in the time that you've been doing your own recordings, all the parts of it that you do?
Gosh, what a great question. I think that, well, I can tell you what I'm learning now. I think that I'm pretty late in the game to be at this point. At least I kind of always feel like that. I always feel a little bit behind. That's just maybe my personality. But, looking at the techniques of recording, learning how to do it, how the greats did it, how they pulled it off, trying to emulate, trying to figure out how sounds were made and reproduce them, that kind of thing. I think I got to a point where I go, okay, I can make a guitar sound like a guitar. I can get that on tape, but it's kind of like some kind of photorealistic anything. you do a drawing and it looks exactly like a photograph. It's like, well, why didn't you just take a photo? There is value in the imperfection. I've always known that in theory, but it's like, okay, it's a guitar. What if it doesn't sound like a guitar? What if the drums don't sound like that? And learning to take some creative chances there, kind of reclaiming that youthful creative energy that I started with.
That's good. That's great. Okay, last one.
Okay.
What's your best Nashville advice?
Show up. Keep showing up. Gosh, part of me is like, gosh, I'm not qualified to say, but I have survived here for over a decade in a tough town. I've been told no by people that later told me yes. It's like I've been told no by everybody, and I've been told yes by people. So you just keep showing up. It's going to be a beating, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Be open to learning, say yes to opportunities, and don't forget that it's music that we're doing. It's not the business side of it can really spoil a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I mentioned that I'd heard the Nashville story or have had the Nashville story. People share it with me on the podcast in the past, and some of them had already done it, and maybe are back in Dallas, for instance. Some have stayed, and I think that's been a fairly an underlying theme there that's been very consistent. Is it's very competitive there, which you would imagine. I mean, you hear all the things that come out of there, and you see all the people there. I would imagine it's very competitive. So I think that's great advice.
I think, well, we didn't get into this. I played college football. I'm a very competitive person. I think life is competitive. I think you can pretend it's not. Sometimes if you set up your life the wrong way. But if you're sitting in reality, hey man, people are always like, hey, there's enough success to go around. Is there though? Is there? I don't know. It seems like maybe there is, maybe there isn't. But to me, the making music is separate. It has to be separate from that. I think in Nashville, it's really in your face. Hey, this person's having success and you perceive them at this level of talent. This person's having this success with this talent and they're doing these things. And you get tempted to copy and compete and all these things. And at the end of the day, man, you just got to make your music. And I think that making a living from making music is a relatively new phenomenon on the scale that we're at now. I mean, and it's diminished obviously since the 90s or something, but making music, it's like, let that be the thing and figure out the rest later. So doing it in Dallas, doing it in Nashville, to me, it's just make the music.
I love that. I think most people would say that's what all they really want to do. So I think that's great. Charlie, I found 2 places online that look like the best for people to find you, and decided that one of them was probably the best at the moment. And tell me if I got it right. It's Charlie Berry at Charlie Berry Music on Instagram.
Yeah, that's great. At Charlie Berry Music on all social media except Twitter is Berry Music, or you can go to charlieberrymusic.com.
Yep, those were the 2, the website and your Instagram. You look very active on social, and the website's great. And it's been really fun speaking with you today. Thanks for spending time with me.
Man, thanks so much for having me. This was great.
You got it. If you do not yet have a website for your music, check out Bandzoogle. It was created to help musicians and bands build their website and manage direct-to-fan marketing and sales. Bandzoogle features amazing design options, a commission-free store to sell merch, music, tickets, and you get detailed fan data. And there's more. Try it free at bandzoogle.com. Use the promo code ROBONZO, that's ROBONZO, to get 15% off your first year. You've been listening to The Unstarving Musician with Robonzo. That's me. Please follow us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. You can find links and mentions for this episode at unstarvingmusician.com. Thanks again for listening. Peace, gratitude, and a whole lot of love.